Hey, so what is going on everyone? It is me, Mr. Mario, and today I'm going to be showing you all how to take apart your Xbox One controller. Now, I know this sounds like a pretty basic tutorial, and it kinda is, but the reason why I'm making this tutorial is because I actually wanted to do a video where I was doing a LED mod on my controller, and I noticed that this controller is a lot harder to take apart than the Xbox 360 controller. Not that it's impossible or anything, but I'll put it like this. Compared to the 360 controller, you need to actually solder just to take the thing apart. So with this, I'm going to be showing you all what to do. Now, first off, I recommend you watch this video one time through so you know what to do and everything, so you don't like follow along and you lose something, then you realize you don't have a part that you might need. So what you're going to need for this is, I would recommend using either fingernails, like your own fingernails for this, to take apart the sides, or use a plastic pry tool of some kind, a T8H security bit screwdriver, a T6 security bit screwdriver. Doesn't even have to be security, but T6 will work out just fine. And you're also going to need some solder and a soldering iron, and with that it would also help to have, you know, some flux and all that on the side, so all the regular soldering stuff. Now, before I officially start this tutorial, I also want to give credit where credit is due, so big shout out to Comrade from 7 Sins. I actually checked out his written and picture tutorial first to see how to take apart the Xbox One controller fully, and then did it in video format right here. So because of that, I'm going to be linking his tutorial down below in the description. So I'm doing the video version of it with the audio, but just in case you need to read something in detail, I highly recommend checking out his tutorial because he did a pretty awesome job with his. So now that you have your controller sitting in front of you, what you want to do is go ahead and if there's any batteries, take them out because, well, first off, you need to get through that to take apart the controller, and second, just don't try and take something apart that has power going to it. So you could use the pry tool right here as I'm showing, but I don't know, for some reason I have more control with my fingernails with this stuff. So what I do is I use the pry tool a little bit. It doesn't really work out that well, so then what I do is I just take my fingernails, kind of put them into the sides of the controller, because on each side there's going to be a little portion of the controller that you can pull back. So the first time you do this especially, it's going to sound and feel horrible, but trust me, this thing is designed to be thrown around and all that just like other controllers, so it should be fine. Now when you take that apart, there is going to be 5 T8H screws that you need to remove. So one of them is going to be in the middle of the sticker that is underneath where the batteries go, and what you can do is you could just either pull off the warranty sticker with all the information, or you can just go ahead and puncture a hole in it like I did before. So normally what I do is I take this one apart first, and then on each side where you took off some of the plastic, there's going to be a screw at the top of the controller near the trigger and one at the bottom of the controller. You can just look for them, they're really not hard to find, but once you take off those 5 screws, you're then able to remove the front faceplate of the controller. So once you get the screws off, go ahead, just pop off the front faceplate. It comes off as easy as that. And then since you're here, you might as well go ahead and just pop off the thumbsticks as well too. If you're really paranoid about putting them back in the right position and all that, just put one of them higher and one of them lower on your desk, or one of them to the left or right, just to symbolize left and right or up and down, whatever you use to differentiate. Now you'll also need to take off the back part of the controller as well too. So go ahead and just like lift the main chassis where the controller is in. And as you can see, now you have the back part of the controller. So you should have the front faceplate off and the back of it off, and that should be the rest of the controller right there that contains all the PCBs and everything. Now if you go ahead and pick up the controller and just flip it around to the other side, to the back side, this is going to be the hardest part of this tutorial. You should have your soldering iron ready to go right here, but there's going to be 4 wires on each half of the controller, and what you need to do is you need to desolder all of them. So what I recommend doing is keep this video up while you do it, or take a picture of it, anything like that, so you know which wires go where, because there are sets of wires that come from the front of the controller and sets of wires that go to the rumble motors as well, that come from there technically. If you ever misplace these or anything like that, or you don't know where they go, as I said, you can always look up a tutorial or look at a picture or take a picture before you continue with this. But even on the PCB, they are labeled. They are labeled positive and negative, and as long as you remember that black is negative and whatever the other color is positive, you should be good to go, and you should be able to remember and realize where they go to. So with your soldering iron all heated up, what you want to do is just go in and carefully make sure that you are able to desolder these wires with ease. You just want to go to the pad itself where the solder is and heat up the solder just enough so that it melts, and then just lightly pull back on the wire. These are very fragile wires, very thin, and this is really not a hard process or anything, so you don't need to use any force. If you're having any difficulty with this, what you could do is you could take some solder, put it onto the tip of your soldering iron, and then melt it into the solder that's already on the PCB itself, so you heat it up a little more and you liquefy it easier. But one thing I would also highly recommend to anybody who's doing component level stuff like this is buy a liquid flux of any kind, really. You can get some from Radio Shack, or you can get Kingbo Flux online, anything like that. And trust me, you take some flux, you put it on the points that you're hitting, and it will make everything not only a stronger bond, but just so much easier to melt when you're doing all of this. Because remember, I mean, if you take them off, awesome, but to put your controller back together, you're going to have to solder everything back on, which is still not that hard, but it's a little bit harder. So now at this point, you should have everything desoldered. So as I said, you know, the gray and black wires from the other PCB should be desoldered, and the rumble motors should also be taken off as well too. And you can just put them over to the side and make sure you differentiate which one goes where. In case you need to remember, the left one is the bigger motor, and the right one is the smaller motor. So you can choose to do whatever you want to with them, but just if you want to keep everything stock, just remember where they go. Now, what I do right here is I go ahead and take off 2 of the T6 screws. So you're going to need your T6 screwdriver or bit, and on the PCB, the first PCB right here, the one with the C written on it, on the left side of the controller and the right side of the controller, there is one T6 screw on each side. You want to just go ahead and remove these 2 screws and just put them somewhere safe. Yes, I know there's other T6 screws that are lower into the controller on the other side. Don't worry about those right now. We're going to get to those later. So now if you look at the top of the controller, either on the back side or the front side, there are going to be some little circles or tabs where the triggers are. These are for the bumpers, which you need to remove. So what I do is, you can use a flathead screwdriver, but I just use a pry tool and I get in there, and you need to pop off the bumpers from the top and bottom. So you can do this either way. You could either go from the bottom and pop it, and then pop it from the top and it will just come off, or do it the opposite way. But as you can see, they come off pretty easily right there, and when you do that, it's going to release your triggers. So the triggers you're not taking off right now, but you're just taking off the bumpers. Now, once you take off the final bumper, you should go ahead and put them somewhere safe, and if you look at your controller, it should kind of look like a cat right now, just a really mangled, deformed cat, but a cat nonetheless. Now, the next thing we're going to remove is the D-pad, and there is a silver circle around that. What you want to do is, at the top there are 2 tabs. You just want to pop them off with a flathead screwdriver, and then the D-pad will come off with ease. That's a pretty simple step. You just need to find a small flathead screwdriver for that. Next up, we're going to remove the guide button right here. So what you want to do is you want to go ahead and hold down the guide button, and then go from the bottom on the front of the controller and pop it off. And it comes off like that. Pretty simple as well. One thing you need to be really careful of, though, is losing the sync button. As you can see, it is up there, and it is just a little piece unto itself. So what you want to do is just go ahead, take it off, and keep it somewhere safe, and remember where it goes, because it's very easy to lose that. Now that you have all that stuff on top removed, what you want to do is go down to the bottom of the controller and start taking off the first PCB. As you can see, it kind of comes off with some force right there. It feels like you're going to break it, but you're really not going to. It's fine, it will be sturdy enough. And if you haven't taken off those 2 T6 screws, now would be the time to do it. So do that before you remove that PCB. Now we're going to take out the final PCB. So what you want to do is you want to find the 6 T6 screws on this PCB itself, and you want to just go ahead and unscrew those. Once you have all the screws removed, you just want to go ahead and lift it off gently, and as you can see, this is where all the buttons are normally pressed, where all that stuff goes, and where your LED is, just in case you want to swap out that LED color. Now, as you can see, the only things in the controller that I'm really not taking out are the triggers and the buttons themselves. So aside from that, I mean, you've taken apart the controller completely down to its bone. So a lot harder to do than the Xbox 360 controller, but still kind of easy nonetheless, so you should be able to get through it just fine. Now you can go ahead, sit back, and admire your work, because your mesh should look something like this, where you just have a bunch of controller pieces everywhere. So congratulations, you have now taken apart your Xbox One controller. Now the fun part is putting it all back together and making sure it all works. Anyways, this is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone.